Gary Morrell had armpit hair in 5th grade.
Well, because he was 45 years old in 5th grade.
How old was Gary? Do you really think? Because
he always looked old. He looked like he
looked like Benjamin Button or something. Yeah, he was. But Gary, that's one of those things where you're like, oh well, of course he's in 5th grade. But now as an adult, with knowing everything, I'm like, oh, he could have been like 17, because he had a full in 5th grade. Mm-hmm. It looked like he had buckwheat in a headlock.
Yeah.
I mean, it was impressive. So
Chris and I think got armpit hair at the same time.
So that sounds right.
I think that I was 8th, maybe even 9th grade, and he was 3 years behind me. So 5th or when should a person normally start getting armpit hair?
Well, I remember my barometer was Danny Duncan, because he was 1 year above me, and he got it in 7th grade. So when I was in 7th grade, so I had leg hair, I had other hair, armpit hair wasn't coming in. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get mine until 7th, 8th grade. So I think normal is 6th, 7th grade.
Okay. But there's always that one. And it's like with anything, like when you're a parent, you think your kid's never going to talk or crawl or
I remember
do things
being
like that.
in the minivan, being in the back every day, and I'd be like, what's wrong with me?
So you remember when you're kind of high school, college age, you're kind of cherishing any hair you have. Like I had a patch of hair on my chest that I thought was some sort of like.
You sort of shaved around that? Or?
No, that's all I had. That was like the only area. That was all. That's all there was, right? Yeah. But I remember thinking. I mean, not like people were coming around to see it, but I remember. I mean, you remember the fact that I had chest hair.
I do, because I didn't have chest hair.
A couple years ago, and if my phone was on, I'll show you the picture actually afterwards. It's worth it. So my friend sends me a picture of us from freshman year, and I remember we went out on this hill. We were freshmen. It had snowed. For some reason, I'm in a pair of pink boxers and sunglasses, and I'm laying down like I'm like tanning.
It's a great picture.
It's a wonderful picture. Well,
put it on the website. Again, put that as like the Steve picture. You're not. Well, actually, at this rate, you might get elected as governor of Virginia. But that's a great picture. Sorry.
But the thing that was amazing to me was, so I was never fat when I was younger, but I wasn't in good shape. Like when I was younger.
I see where you're going. Yeah.
So I'm there. I'm tan.
You're like,
I'm very fit.
I'm at the peak, like genetically, that I'm ever going to be.
And you don't appreciate or realize it. And there is not a spot of hair on me. And I'm telling you, now this picture isn't right on top of me, but I look like I've rolled through some sort of like, I've gone through Petco and like rolled around like where they trim the dogs or something like that.
Trust me. Yeah, I know. And you don't realize almost how much hair you have like on your arms and stuff until there's a reason to know.
Right.
Like I went in, I got my back waxed. I told you that.
Yeah.
Right?
Then I've done that before, and my back broke out so bad.
My back broke out real bad. I've told you about the South African girl.
So the story we just finished that will not make it to air remind me of another story I have about South Africa. So a few years ago, in a professional situation, we needed a third-party company to assist us on something. So some facts will be kind of cluttered here intentionally. So the organization was out of South Africa. Okay. So a young lady comes to our office, meets with several of our staff, and when you're receiving a sales pitch, that you can tell when people have their opening kind of shtick or act.
Yep.
So this woman, who we knew was from South Africa, decided to open the meeting thusly.
Oh, no.
So, what do you guys think of when you think of South Africa?
Apartheid.
That was what everyone said in their mind.
Yeah, sorry.
So for about 7 seconds, I actually don't remember what anybody said, except everyone's eyes suddenly look, going...
Why would she lead? She knows what the answer is.
That's her, and that was her lead. And it was you could tell it was not spur of the moment, I think this is how I'm going to open.
Does she not know? Does she think you're going to say lions?
Yes. Actually, she did.
Yeah.
So that...
I know that from the previous story.
Okay.
They think that's like their big export.
People think that.
Yes.
Like we're sitting around going...
That's what she thought. And yeah.
So maybe that's another South African tradition I'm not aware of. That they have.
Well, I mean, they do have lions around, but like, it's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not your
So
reputation around the world is that you have lions.
And, so after the word apartheid bounced around all of our heads, she said lions. And then pulls out a thing with several different wood-carved animals to share with us that we could keep as like kind of keepsakes.
But she's already kind of started things on it. Like she basically farted in the room.
Well, there might be some sort of sales technique to like if you want to make everyone uncomfortable and unresponsive, which goes against everything I've said.
But
I've always
maybe she's a genius.
She could be. I've always found you want to get people to say positive things and say yes.
Maybe it's like when you say, this is the old mom and dad. I have some bad news, or not some bad news. I have something I have to tell you. I'm pregnant. Mm-hmm. It's what was the guy? E-Money or Conway Twitty's son?
Slim Thug.
It's Slim Thug's baby. And then you go, actually, I just got a C on my science test. So maybe there's some psychological thing there where they set you up for the.
Or there's some people that have really, really bad perception about how people think of their country.
That's hilarious. So did you end up going with the?
We actually did.
Then it worked because that was what I was going to say.
And if one day I die mysteriously, I'm tracked down if this individual hears this story and takes me out. Or next time you want a bunch of people, I've seen in action, if you're in a business meeting and want a bunch of people to stop speaking and have their eyes bug out of their head.
That should be your new lead for every meeting, even though with no follow-up. Hey, what's the first thing you think about? And everybody just looks at you and they go, all right, so Craig, you had something you wanted to start with. South Africa is known for that, and also the fact that
maybe it's a good way to start this episode based on, since we both know what we're going to discuss, that we've set the bar very low with a apartheid reference to get things going.
It's a very racist country, but it's a little different. It's a little different in its racism.
Maybe that's their don't mess with Texas. South Africa. Very racist country.
Yeah, the tourism board said, South Africa, we have lions.
And we sent you Dave Matthews.
Gosh. So far, this episode has been misogynist,
transphobic,
racist. So welcome to Origin of Speaksies. I'm Scott, along with my friend Steve, and we're going to try to rein things in a little bit with some words and phrases. Our first one tonight is Hunky Dory.
Hunky Dory.
Yes.
Which so far this episode has not been. So
it hasn't been. It's been a little controversial, maybe. I don't know. We're known for our controversy.
That's right.
Well, PETA doesn't like us. We know that. We've had some very unhappy PETA representatives.
As opposed to all the cheerful, happy PETA representatives.
They're normally happy with the.
There's such happy people that are very cheery.
Yeah, but Hunky Dory,
Hunky Dory. So that's a term I've heard before. I think I've used.
I use it for sure.
Okay. Everything's hunky dory. Everything's okay.
Everything's like peachy keen kind of. Yeah. It's like an older, it feels old timey, but also sort of ironic. Like, hunky dory. I'm good.
When I heard that, I wanted to say A-OK, which made me realize that OK actually has levels. So you could be okay or you could be A-OK, which I feel like is slightly better than okay.
Well, and it's also how it's said. So let's do a little role play. Hey, Steve, how's everything going at work?
Everything's hunky dory.
Oh, fantastic. I actually believe that.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, it's not like, how's everything going at work, Steve?
It's okay.
Exactly. Now let's try A-OK.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Steve, how are things going at work?
It's A-OK. I don't think you can say A-OK without like putting on some sort of like, FM DJ voice. It's A-OK.
It's A-OK. But I realize though, this is one, I've been wanting to do this one for a while because it's weird, right? It's not like I have no idea why we'd say hunky dory at all. Do you have thoughts?
I think that's also one that's hard when people come to this country. Maybe English isn't their native language. It's kind of a hard one to explain, I think, too. I don't think it translates. There's other things that people can kind of pick up on. We've talked about other idioms before that people, you hear it and you understand it kind of instinctively. Yeah. This one, I don't think has that.
Not at all.
So
because that could mean horrible. If you were new to the country, or just hadn't heard it. How's everything going? Oh, it's Hunky Dory.
Yeah. So one of the things that got me excited about this one when you brought it up was this is one of my favorite David Bowie albums.
Yeah, that's great.
Is called Hunky Dory. So a little background on me, especially if anyone's new to the podcast. We very early on discussed when I was younger, I had a young Rod Stewart phase that I musically explored and was a fan.
A barely legal Rod Stewart phase.
Barely legal Rod Stewart, still late 60s, early 70s. So after I left my Rod Stewart phase, I wanted to make sure I transitioned to something that would continue to make me incredibly sexually unattractive to any young lady. So if anyone knows me in real life, these are one of the many reasons why I met my wife after college, because I was working through some things to make sure that I was no one wanted to spend but so much time with me.
Right.
Between musical taste, dressing, haircuts, and general overall bathing.
But,
you know what? I had a flashback of totally off topic.
Please.
When I was in college, when I would change my bed sheets. This is true.
I don't know.
I would, when my face would break out, I'd wake up and one side of my face had broken out. I knew, hey, I need to change my pillowcase.
So I actually was roommates with your brother in college.
Yeah.
So my sheets got clean. Like, he did all the laundry. He took an entire bottle of Carpet Fresh and would vacuum every day. And he was disgusted by me.
Yeah.
So like disgusted. It was in his face. It was in the way he talked to me. I was a slob.
Between the two of us, if we average each other out, we were probably just the right amount of cleanly, yet let's not be over the top about it. Yeah. So I'm a very clean person.
So David Bowie. Now, I'll say this, though. I was always confused about your music because I was more into, so in those days, I was whatever was, the new metal stuff I was down with. I mean, Creed, all that. Meanwhile, you're listening to David Bowie, and I was like,
yeah, again, he's
again,
really
if we're going to offend people, what I thought was maybe
he is trying to make himself sexually attractive, maybe to a different crowd.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, this guy's into WWF. He's I didn't know about the Rod Stewart. That would have made it way worse. Prince and David Bowie.
Prince was about that time too, again. But Prince is different because I think the ladies, that there's an appeal with that.
No, but I didn't understand that when I was, I get it now. He's a coxman, but I didn't know that. I did not know that then. However, I knew that I thought I knew where your head was at when it came to that stuff, so to speak. But my point I'm getting at is later in life, I've definitely thought, man, Steve was ahead of the curve on some of this music. Because while I was listening to Disturbed, he was listening to Mott the Hoople or something like that. So I'm like,
good transition back. So Mott the Hoople, their big song, All the Young Dudes. Take a big guess who wrote that song?
Rod Stewart? Bowie?
No.
Bowie?
David Bowie.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
that's why we're here.
There you go. Well, you made me a playlist of way back in the day, had Mott the Hoople on it. And I was like, this is good. I didn't like it when I was 22, but
yeah, you appreciate it now. So Hunky Dory is the album that came out right before Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
And The Spiders from Mars, which was David Bowie's big breakthrough album. So that's one of the things I like about it is the album's leading up to that. He's still kind of figuring out who he's going to be.
Well, this is also probably one of his more commercial albums, right? Like
Hunky Dory?
Yeah.
But now it is because there's some songs you'll recognize. When it came out, not really. Okay. But as a big Bowie fan, I always, Ziggy Stardust, everyone knows that from like his glam rock phase. I like the albums that surround that. Hunky Dory is kind of like proto Ziggy, so you see where he's going with that. And then afterwards, Aladdin Sane, which is something he threw together very quickly and has a very sloppy sound in a good way. But I think those almost are better, kind of more deeper cuts if you look at both of those. But Hunky Dory was always one of my favorite Bowie albums.
So Hunky Dory has Changes, which
has Life on Mars.
Maybe his big Life on Mars.
Yeah.
But which one of those albums has Genie, Starman? Are those Ziggy Stardust?
That's Ziggy Stardust.
Okay.
Which is, again, not to take anything away from
songs. Yeah.
And the phases he goes through. That's his glam rock phase is one of my favorite. But then he goes from that. He goes to his Plastic Soul phase. He goes to his Berlin phase.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I could be making stuff up.
No, I will tell you. I have listened to the playlist you sent me with Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn. Mm-hmm. I like it a lot. I'm going to tell you, though, it's converted me more to Loretta Lynn. Holy
she is magnificent, and she's so regal.
Her writing. I'm going to go ahead and assume she wrote that stuff. If she didn't write these songs, I mean, her voice is amazing, and the lyrics are just great. I mean, these are great songs. So, and I have enjoyed the Conway Twitty as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And by the way, my daughter has apparently been discussing Conway Twitty at the bus stop. So I'm expecting the count.
How happy are you? I know you must be the proudest dad in the world. I know.
I'm proud.
I'm a dad too.
But my wife, who is at the bus stop every day, is not as proud as I am hearing the story.
I know, but let me tell you, she is getting culture, because I remember too when I think we had dinner one night or whatever, and she started talking about who's the guy that had the show, the variety show Black and White.
Oh, Lawrence Welk.
Lawrence Welk. So she's been brought up on Lawrence Welk and Conway Twitty.
Yeah. And, one day when she's old enough, we'll discuss the different phases of David Bowie. I feel like she'll have a good
Absolutely.
balance.
So Hunky Dory, you can't say Hunky Dory without thinking about David Bowie.
Yeah.
So you want to hear a little bit about where this comes from?
Yes.
Hunky Dory. I'm going to start by saying this is one of the ones where we don't know for sure. So we don't know exactly how it came together, but you're going to leave this episode with a knowledge of enough to have an idea.
Yeah, a couple good stories that might be true, and some that are pretty apocryphal and probably not even close.
Hunky Dory, the first time that it's actually in print is in 1862. So this is an American one. Even though the etymology is not American, Hunky Dory is American. So in 1862, in George Christie's Essence of Old Kentucky.
That sounds like a deodorant I want to buy.
Right. It's like a bourbon flavored deodorant.
From Old Spice.
What is the Essence of Old Kentucky? Yeah.
Well,
listen, my whole family's from Kentucky, so you know how your family apparently is from everywhere, so you can talk about everybody. I'm going to talk about Kentucky. I like Kentucky. I love Kentucky. I love my family from Kentucky. I don't want any part of the essence of Old Kentucky.
I don't know.
But there's a song called Limerick Races. So when you hear Limerick, you think Irish, right? And it starts, one of the boys am I that always am in clover, yada, yada, yada. And it ends with your smiling faces round, 'tis then I'm Hunky Dory.
So when I hear that, I think these guys are on stage dressed like leprechauns.
So Limerick Races, you're thinking leprechauns, you're thinking whatever. Essence of Old Kentucky. Here we go again with a little cakewalkiness, which is, no, this was the Christie Minstrels. The Christie Minstrels, while they were Irish, all wore blackface.
All right.
And I don't know if are you familiar with the term? Probably not, because you don't see color like me, but.
That's right. All right, so let's get our statement out of the way.
Because we're a Richmond, Virginia podcast.
We do not endorse, do not wear blackface. It is not a good thing. We have not done it.
And we will submit our yearbook photos.
I've never been so glad that I never took a college yearbook picture than I have in this last week. So again, blackface is bad. Don't do it.
Blackface is bad. Even brownface is bad.
Yeah.
Anything.
Just don't do it.
Steve and I, we were talking about this before the show. Everybody does things that they think are funny when they're like in high school.
Right. We do dumb things.
And we did a lot of dumb things. I mean, you do things like you TP some lady's house and then you think that's a really hilarious idea.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, it's like, who would do that?
Right.
I never thought it would be a good idea to put on any sort of color on my face or anything like that.
And I never thought it would be a good idea and to document that in something that people will look back at year after year and that will be kept.
Yeah. Well, you were showing me though. It's like, apparently it's on now.
Yeah.
It's yearbook season.
There's some poor intern at every newspaper in the country that is now assigned to go to all the local colleges and go through the yearbooks.
And by the way, beyond blackface, man, just anything, don't do anything. I've told my son this.
Don't do anything.
Well,
that's what you should
start
do now.
there.
No pictures of yourself.
Well,
just don't do anything.
What I've told him is anything you do on your phone, you should be prepared for your kids and your grandkids to see that one day.
Right.
Because it's all going somewhere.
Right.
And whatever the laws are now about privacy,
forget it.
Disregard that. Because I'm already prepared that everything I've posted ever, my grandkids will be able to see one day.
Right.
And it's a very sobering thought.
Yeah.
But so anyway, and frankly, George Christie and his kids probably didn't realize that here in 2019 we'd be talking about them, but we are.
I think even that people who performed on stage would probably go, why are you going to put that in your yearbook?
So anyway, so these guys were this Irish group. They dressed in blackface, and We don't know why they talked about Hunky Dory, but what it does do is it establishes that this was a well-known saying.
Mm-hmm. And the song was popular too. So it was kind of out there in the general ether, which also helps explain how it got out there. It was able to spread around by being a popular song.
Yeah, absolutely. So you hear this Hunky Dory, it gets out there. It's a lot of these other ones. By the way, so in 1866, so a couple years later, this writer in the Galveston Daily News, which, just a quick pause, Galveston Daily News has come up a few times. And it's just funny because you think about cities in the United States. I mean, Galveston is down in South Texas.
Right. When you think of big newspapers, the Galveston Daily News isn't, on your top 5.
Yeah, but apparently in the 19th century, late 19th century, it was something that some people read a lot because it actually comes up a fair amount. So good job, Galveston, and we see you here in the future. Good job. But they have an ad where they talk about being hunky dore, D-O-R-E, as fresh as a lily, as sweet as a pink. Don't know what that means.
Yep, don't want to know.
Don't want to know. But anyway, Hunky Dory, they said. And so it was enough that it was out there. Some other variations on this were like hunkum bunkum. Everything was hunkum bunkum. That meant, and that was in a sporting newspaper in 1842 called The Spirit of the Times. So this predates that. So we're trying to go back and figure out, where did Hunky Dory come from? Because like you said before, it's not intuitive. You don't hear it and go, yeah, that sounds like something good that you'd say. All right, so let's start talking about where we can at least say where part of this comes from. So part of this, let's start with the hunky part. Any clues where that comes from?
So the hunky part, researching the roots of it, one is hunk is used to mean in a safe position.
Right.
And that's New York City slang for kids playing in street games.
Yes.
And another one I saw also, which I think is the best one, it comes from the Dutch honk, meaning post or station, home.
Okay, so yeah, exactly. And do you remember what New York was called before it was New York?
New Amsterdam?
Exactly.
Man.
So it is a Dutch word, which, by the way, season 1 had no Dutch involved.
They're everywhere now.
Season 2 might be...
It's our Dutch time.
It's our Dutch season. So New Amsterdam, Hunky Dory comes from the etymology of hunky comes from a Dutch word, honk. H-O-N-K. Mm-hmm. So, and I do want to look a little further into honk and any other derivations of that. But what that means in Dutch is home, like you said, or goal. So I read too somewhere that was used for like if you more an informal, like if you were playing tag. So if you
like home base sort of thing.
Home base, you're going to honk. So that's it for the hunky part. I think like I said before, the Dory part we're not sure of, but the best apocryphal one I saw, which, I mean, honestly, it could have something to do with this, but wait till you hear this. In 1877, in a Dictionary of Americanisms, John Russell Bartlett suggested a Japanese influence. So when I saw this, it was funny because it's one word, which he called hunky dory, Hunkidori, which means superlatively good. And it's said to be a word introduced by someone by the name of Japanese Tommy. Hey, real quick, where do you think Japanese Tommy was from?
Japan.
He was not from Japan. Oh. So Japanese Tommy was a street performer. So kind of tie back to our last episode or one of our previous episodes with street performers in the carnies. But he was a dwarf. He was a black dwarf. And he was a very popular variety performer. His actual name was Thomas Dilward. But in the 1860s, he was known as Japanese Tommy. And he used this term, Honchudori, Honchodori. And the idea is that Japanese Tommy got this term from Japan. Even though he wasn't from Japan, it came from U.S. sailors, okay? So here's the theory. Sailors stationed in Japan...
They needed a place to have their needs taken care of.
That's exactly right. So where did you go for this? Well, there's a Japanese word named Dory, D-O-R-I, which means street or like Main Street. So they may have known of the hunky, everything's all hunkum dunkum or whatever we said before, but it's like hunk or hunkum coming from the Dutch honk. the theory is maybe they put the two together and said, Hunky Dory, so you go to the main street and you're all good, basically.
Right, you're taken care of.
I mean, listen, we've heard worse. I don't buy it because I think it's a little too convenient. So you're saying a guy named Japanese Tommy knew Japanese sailors that knew the word Dory and also knew about Hunky, but got to be careful there with how I say that. I don't want to offend you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make sure we brought up Japanese Tommy. Yeah. I don't think Hunky Dory is a Japanese word, but then when you say it, it does sound very Japanese. Yeah. So,
but the good thing that came out of this, it gave us, as we were researching things, gave us a reason to discuss our next term, Harakiri. Often, sometimes pronounced Harry Caray. I believe it's actually spelled properly Harakiri, but we're going to refer to it by its more, I think, official name, seppuku. So seppuku is a ritualistic Japanese way of committing suicide. It means suicide by disembowelment.
So we're gonna bring everybody's spirits up here after the blackface talk.
We're gonna really hit some happy subjects. So when I hear this term, you knew what it was when you saw that. You knew what it meant, right?
What, Harry Caray?
Yeah.
I mean, I knew basically. I did not know Harry Caray and seppuku, or seppuku. What is it? Seppuku were the same thing,
right?
But I feel like I've heard this in popular culture. Gotta go. He's gonna commit Harry Caray,
right?
And it's very confusing.
And you've kind of, I think we were exchanging stuff leading up to this, and there's the scene from Airplane. You kind of know. You've seen it almost as a joke of someone putting a knife in their stomach and taking their own life.
So I'm very curious about how real this actually is.
Right. And I was actually surprised to find out its roots and it actually is a real thing. So the origin of seppuku comes from a ritual suicide that was associated with the Japan's ancient samurai warrior class.
Nice.
So it's more dramatic. I mean, not to say it stabbing yourself in your stomach is not, that's dramatic enough on its own.
Right.
But there's a ritualistic act with certain moves that you do to take your own life.
Right.
And it also incorporates help. This is not something you do on your own. So one of the things I learned about was that you would keep if you were going to do this, first you would write some poems.
That's right.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Death poems you would write.
That's pretty badass though.
Well, especially when you read about samurais.
Well, but it's very Japanese. It's very old school Japanese.
Right.
Honor and very romantic.
For something that is so grisly and violent, it is in a weird way. I think romantic is a good term with that, but it gets back into the Japanese culture of honor and shame.
Yeah.
And we have a story later that kind of relates to that, when there was a time where that was violated and some people didn't let it go.
Oh, interesting.
So the roots of it come back to samurai as early as the 12th century. And the swordsman would often do it to avoid capture on the battlefield, sometimes as a way to protest, and also as a way for an honorable death if they've done something that would result in capital punishment instead of the shame of having someone take their life.
Would this be something where they have to ask permission for this, or are they just like, you're not gonna kill me, I'm gonna do it myself?
I think a little bit. I think it was more, I guess depending on the circumstance.
Right.
So the act includes you take a knife, you stab yourself in the belly, you slice open your stomach, and then turn the blade upwards. That's what you would do as the person practicing it.
It's not what I would do.
Right.
I would never have the guts, no pun intended, to do this.
So I had mentioned earlier you would be assisted. So you would enlist a second to help you, a kaishakunin, I believe is the way to say it.
Gesundheit.
And thank you. And this person's job would be after you'd made the cuts to yourself.
Yeah.
They would behead you.
So this is, that's an act of mercy at that point.
Yeah, I would say so. But
that's a bad way. So my only education on this is from Reservoir Dogs, where Mr. White, I believe, the one that gets shot in the stomach, and I remember either they talk about it's like one of the worst ways to die.
Right.
So I think now the Japanese folks, they probably are a little more precise and they knew where they were going with the knife.
Right.
But bleeding out from the gut, not the way you want to go.
Right.
So getting the beheading might be.
But you also want someone to be precise in that job too.
Oh,
So
yes, please.
But that
Well, by the
not
way,
always was the case, as we'll discuss here in a few minutes.
not to get off too far, but I recently listened to an episode of Last Podcast on the Left where they did an entire thing on headsmen and how hard it is to get that right.
Right.
And you don't want to mess that up.
Yeah.
You want to, and in fact, and again, this is straight from that episode. They talked about how nobles and people that had money would, back in medieval times, would pay money to the headsman, would like tip the headsman so that they would do a better job of trying to get it off in one clean slice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear how this sort of translates
I think of
our folks who we're talking about today.
Mary Queen of Scots, who it took several times.
There's stories too about where, I mean, let's just go all the way dark here because we are, about how when the head comes off, you're not necessarily, the head still can move around a little bit. So it's none of it's anything you want, but I guess I'm gonna tell you right now, if I ever have to commit seppuku, is that how you say it?
I believe you do.
I would like somebody with a steady hand to finish the job, so I'm not sitting there.
And I will confirm your idea here shortly.
Please do.
So as you can imagine, seppuku was something that fell out of favor. As you know,
I can imagine that. Sure.
Not a very popular.
Because you're like, I'm a civil. So in Japan, so where you're going is with this. I think this goes back to more the feudal,
right?
Japanese, the old school samurai,
but we
honor
still
system.
very much see the honor system. So
and then they're saying, hey, let's get a little more civilized. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah. So with World War II,
not familiar.
Yeah, you might have heard of it. So with the conclusion of World War II, when Japan surrendered, very, very difficult shift in culture for the Japanese, and something that
they did not want to surrender.
They did not. Well, there's a reason why there were a couple bombs dropped. So this was a big blow for Japanese culture and honor and shame.
Sure.
So there were some incidents of seppuku at that time.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah, but it was the emperor who was seen as divine surrendering. That's a pretty big blow to any culture. And one of the things that's always very interested me in terms of history is seeing the Japanese regime at that time. They were brutal. If anyone's had a chance to read history in general, a couple books that pop up are Unbroken by Laura Hildenbrand, and also the story of the rape of Nanking. And we kid around about trigger warnings and things like this.
Yeah,
it's something that is good to know. It is probably the most awful book I've ever read in my life, and I am.
Do you recommend it or no? Because I have not. I've read Unbroken, but not.
It's one of those things that, unfortunately, with brutal history, you need to read it sometimes to remember things that have happened so it doesn't happen again.
And again, on a much smaller scale, obviously, with our podcast, like there are times there's things we, all kidding aside, don't really want to talk about. Like we don't want to talk about blackface or slavery or any of these other crazy things, but it's like it is history. So we're not gonna you can't not talk about it.
Or else somebody will mess up their yearbook picture again.
Yeah, exactly. Or you might have a socialist running for office or something.
So one of the things that impressed me about Japanese culture was going from such just a brutal regime. One of the books that is one of my favorite books and gave me a great perspective was a biography of Douglas MacArthur called American Caesar by William Manchester.
Can I stop you there?
Please.
We're about to have a moment.
Okay.
I've never read it. Mm-hmm. That was my granddad's favorite book.
Really?
Yeah. He had it in his bookcase. So as soon as you said Douglas MacArthur, I have very strong feelings because my granddad talked about it a lot. Yeah. He was a World War II hero. Mm-hmm. He actually had some problems with Douglas MacArthur. So a
lot of people did.
Yeah. And he had a lot of things to say about him, but my granddad was in the Marines. He won a Silver Star, which if you know, that's a big deal. But he used to talk about Douglas MacArthur, and he, so my granddad, who Steve can see over there the picture of, but he had that book. So ever since I was a little kid, you know how once you get to a certain age, you don't redecorate a lot?
Right. Yeah.
But from your 20s and your 30, you're gonna move things around. At a certain point, what's in the bookcase is what's in the bookcase. Yeah. And boy, that American Caesar, that is a fixture in my mind from my grandparents' house. Mm-hmm. And they had that book. And anyway, so it's so interesting. I've never read it. I want to read it, but so go on. I just had to have that moment where we talked about my grandparents.
So from one extreme of what we see from the Japanese in World War II, afterwards, this book, one of the things it documents is MacArthur's time in post-war Japan.
Okay.
And just the honor and shame, the cultural shift they made.
Yeah.
That they embraced what had happened and went with it, which is why now Japan is an ally in the relations we have. But it's very interesting to see how their culture.
But there had to be people that were.
So there were some people that did not adapt to the change and held on to that. And we're going to discuss one of them now. Yukio Mishima, a Japanese author, poet, playwright, model. Guy did a little bit of everything. Considered for a Nobel Prize in literature. Also known for his...
I thought I was going to say he's the Mark Paul Gosselaar of our time, but then with the model and actor part, but then I don't believe the Nobel Prize part.
Yeah, not yet. But we'll give the guy time.
Yeah,
he was also very famous for being one of the first authors in Japan to discuss homosexuality in his writings, which was very taboo at the time. So logically, as someone who was the first author in Japan to embrace homosexuality in his writing, he also founded a right-wing militia.
Sounds right.
On the side.
All right. Mark Paul Gosselaar, you're on notice.
Yes, we're keeping an eye out for you. The Taitnikoe, or the Shield Society, was a private militia that he had founded in Japan, dedicated to traditional Japanese values and veneration of the emperor. Again, a big thing for the Japanese was when the emperor surrendered, it's admitting pretty much that a divine person isn't divine and is lost.
That makes sense because you would think like, and you know this story better than I do, but like, it's weird because they had so much honor. They were so steeped in tradition. It's nothing like even what we have in the West. What's confusing to me is how like progressive, if I don't know what other word to use, he is on like, so he's an artist, he's a poet, and maybe those are things that were more associated with the feudal Japanese.
Could be, or he also could be just
very weird.
We've seen in history and come across when people are very creative and can do certain things, it puts them in different boundaries. Their boundaries are different.
You know what? That's a great point. It's almost like a cult leader, right? So you can have a Jim Jones who's a preacher and or whatever he is, but he's also doing a lot of extracurricular things. He's doing drugs and sleeping with whoever he wants to. So
I would kind of say maybe another way to look at it would be there's some people that are very creative and very talented.
Yes.
But you would not want them to be your accountant.
Absolutely.
You would not want them to be your attorney.
Right.
You don't want them being the guy that is buttoning up your project.
So basically this, again, let's bring up personalysis. This would have been good.
Yeah.
If somebody would have just put, I don't have any clue what his name was, and I'm not going to try to say it, the Michiyuku guy or whatever. Which I just tried to say it, which I said I wasn't going to, but if he had done a personalysis, it would have been like, dude, you're a yellow. You're an idea guy.
Yeah.
Like, we respect your ideas, but
stick poetry, modeling, good.
Yeah. You're good in front of the camera and with a typewriter or a pen, but let's stay away from the politics and the militia building.
So
everything worked out great for him?
Yeah. Not necessarily. Okay. So Mishima and 4 of his members of the Shield Society seized control of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces headquarters and attempted to rally the soldiers to stage a coup and restore imperial rule.
Oh, no.
So that's something, go big or go home.
Yeah. That's going big.
That's on the list. But that would be an example.
Say, like, I don't know enough about Japanese politics during that time. I think I hate this guy, but I kind of, in a weird way, like...
I think anywhere where you try to run a coup, you're putting yourself out there. This isn't one of those you can kind of back away from and go, you know what?
Yeah.
I was having a rough week. I thought I'd have a coup. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. It's the way I play Monopoly.
Sure.
I either dominate Monopoly or I'm bankrupt quickly.
Absolutely.
There's no in between. Yeah. I don't drag on in the game.
Yeah. I don't need cash reserves. I'm building.
Yeah. So, as you can guess, as you have not heard of him.
Yeah, we all know his name. And
as the new emperor of Japan, his coup did not go well.
So what happened? So they let him off on probation?
They took over the office. He tried to rally the soldiers. He peppered him with pamphlets and gave a speech. Yeah. He was mocked and jeered.
Oh, no, not jeered.
Things did not, mock you can deal with, but don't jeer.
No.
So he decided that this had failed, and the honorable way to end this was to take his own life.
Oh, bring it back to
seppuku.
Seppuku, yeah.
Unfortunately, this was not the only. His coup didn't go as planned. His seppuku somehow went worse.
Oh no!
So, as we discussed earlier, you as part of seppuku, you administer a series of lethal cuts to your stomach, but you have a second there who's supposed to decapitate you to end the ritual.
Things start to go bad. At least you know it's a quick, swift head removal.
Yeah. So not quick, not swift. And after 3 attempts to behead him, his second had to bring in someone else.
Oh no!
To finish the job. So you think you've had a bad day at work cleaning up other people's messes. Tell you the story of Hiroyusa Koga, who come in and properly decapitate Yukio. And then had to also, the second who had failed at his job, then had to kill himself.
I actually was going to ask that. I was like, that guy must have had to do seppuku. Because
seppuku.
Thank you. That is so much shame. It's so funny you said that because I was going to jokingly say, well, that guy must have had to. Oh,
yeah.
So he did.
So he did.
So did the third guy?
The third guy was arrested along with 2 other members for facing charges of bodily injury, violence, illegal possession of firearms and swords, and also assisting a suicide.
I mean, listen, we're PG-13. This is a shit show. Like, this is the definition. This is a definition of a shit show.
But again, when you think your failed coup is the worst thing in your day and you're wrong, you know you're having a bad day. Mr. Koga was convicted along with a few other members, sentenced to 4 years penal servitude, but was released a few months early for good behavior. And I think the last time I doing some research on him, I believe as of 2013, he was still around.
I have an update, actually.
Okay.
They found his yearbook.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. They found him in a minstrel show with some blackface, so he's back in the slammer. Poor guy. So, wow, that's quite the tale, the yarn you've woven here, but this is a true story.
This is, if it wasn't real, I wouldn't believe it.
But the range this guy, I mean, you talk about a Renaissance man.
He did a little of everything.
So, all right, well, thank you for bringing the facts on this one. That was amazing. And I simultaneously respect the whole feudal Japan thing. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, is there anything cooler and more badass than a samurai and that whole thing?
If you're going to do something,
and
do it right.
Don't end up like that. And then, oh my gosh, to be in jail as the third guy that messed up on the, who finished it, but to be the second guy. Yeah. Oh, this is crazy. Now, commit Harry Caray. I want to go back to this. Yeah. So now we know what Harakiri is. Mm-hmm. We know what seppuku is. Mm-hmm. So now you know. So if you ever hear somebody say, I was going to commit Harry Caray, you know what that means. I had heard that a lot growing up and had no clue what it meant. I had no idea of the dark origins of what it was. When I heard it, I thought, commit Harry Caray. So if you're not familiar with Harry Caray, or if you're not familiar with Will Ferrell's impression of Harry Caray on Saturday Night Live, Harry Caray was a broadcaster, and I don't have all his biography details, but bottom line is, Steve, you know who Harry Caray was.
Chicago Cubs, long time. And I was thinking of this the other day as because again, this popped up the first time I saw the pronunciation of it. We had talked previously about how Joan Crawford is kind of stereotyped from Mommy Dearest. That's what we remember of her. I was thinking of Harry Caray's kind of stereotyped as what Will Ferrell did, but then at the same time, that's exactly what he sounded like. There's no difference.
It was very accurate, which is why it was funny.
Hi, everybody. Harry Caray here. And welcome to Space the Infinite Frontier. I once took a pair of binoculars and stared at the sun for over an hour.
Why would you do that?
Curiosity, I guess. Heck, I'm curious like a cat. I have a couple of friends that call me Whiskers.
Because you're curious like a cat?
Yes. Hey, now, kid, we all know that the moon is not made of green cheese.
Yes, that's true, Harry.
But But what if it were made of barbecue spare ribs? Would you eat it then?
What?
I know I would. Heck, I'd have seconds. And then polish it off with a tall, cool Budweiser.
If you grew up in a certain era where the only sports you could watch on TV were, the Braves or the Cubs, and you listen to Harry Caray, he was very endearing. So this guy would, and I'm not going to do the impression. You can Google Will Ferrell's impression, but he was an older guy. He had Coke bottle glasses, and he didn't make a lot of sense. And he used to sing the "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," "Let's Go Root for the Cubbies." But I think his signature move was like there would be a pop up that would like be mid center field, and he would start doing his "It's out of here." Oh no, it's caught by Espinoza on the in center field. So Harry Caray, I like the guy, even though I don't like the Cubs. I love the guy. He was great. And when I would hear commit Harry Caray, I'm thinking it has something to do with like commit, like you commit someone. I really did. So for years, he's going to commit Harry Caray, and I would be so confused. Like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, why are we talking about committing Harry Caray? Because I grew up with Harry Caray.
I would have thought that more if you're committing Harry Caray, it would be taking copious amounts of Budweiser.
Yeah.
And,
Hey, my friend Brendan, his dad works for Budweiser, and he's like now working for Budweiser. He's in the Budweiser family, and they have pictures with Harry Caray because it's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's like that's like getting a picture with the Pope.
Well, no. So let me tell you real quick about Brendan. And Brendan came to our class in 10th grade. Cool dude, loved him. Had a crazy name. His last name's crazy. I won't say it, but I guess his dad lived in Chicago, and we always kind of knew like. He would say, yeah, my dad's into, like, he works for Budweiser, which when you're in 10th grade, you have a friend who says his dad works for Budweiser. Like, you can't trump that though, but B, you're like, is that a real story?
That's like a race car driver too.
Yeah. I'm like, that's like me saying, I have multiple girlfriends in the Niagara region.
They're all models.
Yeah. So yeah, she doesn't go to the school, but lo and behold, man, he now works for Budweiser, and I've seen the pictures on Facebook. So Harry Caray,
it's a
Budweiser,
solid business to get in. They're not worried about recession proof is a term I don't like to use too often.
Yeah.
I would say that is.
Yeah, and no corn syrup. But
yeah,
hey,
thank God.
Listen, quick question though: Are there any two people more opposite than the Chicago Cubs, Harry Caray, and a Japanese samurai committing Harry Caray? It's about as opposite as it gets, right?
We could, yes.
Well, on that note,
thank you for your time.
Yeah, check out your yearbook photos and do any sort of
just burn it.
Burn it.
Don't even
think
about it.
What was Steve's advice earlier to our children?
Don't do anything.
Don't do anything.
I was having a rough week. I thought I'd have a coup.